Mark and Judy, as he sometimes called her, met in college and married a year after graduation. Mark got a job at a large insurance company, and Judy became a high school history teacher. Mark was happy that his corporate job paid 25% more than Judy earned as a teacher, but he was more than a little envious of her several months of summer vacation. They had been married for about 4 years when Mark brought up the subject of children again. It was a sore subject for Judy, as she was tired of her mother and mother-in-law constantly asking her about starting a family, and now Mark was starting to nag her again. "Honey, I'm only 27. I have plenty of time to have children. Why rush into parenthood? I like having free time to myself. Don't you like that we can do whatever we want in the summer?" "Yes, of course. But I also want to be young enough to keep up with our children when they grow up. Besides, if we time it right, we'll still be young enough to enjoy life when the kids leave home." "Well, I'm just not ready. I want to have a few more years of fun before I become a slave to my children. Please, honey, just this year and next, and then I'll stop taking the pills." Mark reluctantly agreed, but, half-jokingly, made Judy swear on her pinky that she would keep her promise. Now he would have to talk to his mother so she wouldn't pressure Judy. Although he felt his mother might agree to compromise, arguing with his mother-in-law was useless. Hopefully, he and Judy could convince her to put off the idea for a year or two. During the next school year, Judy became friends with several new teachers who had recently been hired. They were young, attractive, and all unmarried. Judy went to several impromptu parties that the new girls liked to throw at various bars. She usually left around 9:30 and was home well before 10:30. Mark wasn't thrilled that she was hanging out with young, pretty women, especially after Judy told him that the girls often hook up when they go out. And how do they manage to hook these guys when they go out in a group? "Oh, well, they all love to dance, and the guys usually swarm around our table as soon as the music starts," Judy said, blushing a little, knowing what was coming next. With sarcasm in his voice, Mark said, "Sure, and of course guys just throw themselves at single girls. I'm 100% sure that when guys see your ring, they immediately realize you're not for them and never try to flirt with you. Right, honey? Well, sometimes I get asked to dance, but I make it clear right away that I'm married and it's just dancing. Besides, I can't compete with those girls." "Nonsense. I've seen all those young Bambi girls. They're cute, but you're just as good as any of them." Judy blushed shyly. "You're just saying that because you're my husband and you hope to sleep with me tonight." Then she smiled and said, "You know what, smooth talker? That worked." Then she grabbed his hand and dragged him into the bedroom. Mark stared at the ceiling while Judy rested her head on his shoulder. He loved moments like this. His naked wife was quietly purring in his arms, recovering from her intense orgasm. He kissed her on the head, and his thoughts returned to their earlier conversation. "Jude, I know guys hit on you when you go out, and I trust you know how to fend them off. But have you ever thought about not fending them off?" Judy hesitated for a few seconds, wanting to be honest with Mark. "Honestly? Maybe once. It was an older man who came up to me after I had dinner with a client. He said he worked for a pharmaceutical company and had just moved to the area. He had dinner with the manager of a medical clinic next door and decided to stop in for a drink. He talked to me for a while and we danced a few times. He was handsome and charming. I think he was about to ask me to go with him when my alarm went off at 9:30. I told him I had to get home to my husband and got up. He grabbed my hand and asked me to stay. I looked into his eyes and, I admit, for 2 nanoseconds, I even thought about it, but I quickly pushed him away and left. I don't know what it was about that guy, but he's the only one who's ever seduced me." "Let me guess. It was Alice's birthday 6 weeks ago and you went to the Hilton." "Oh my God, how did you know? No. You turned me on. Sure, maybe he warmed me up a little, but when I got home, I wanted you, and you drove me crazy." Mark was silent for a few moments. "I hope that's true. I want to believe that's true." Jude, I love you, but if you ever say yes to another guy, it'll be the end of us. I know, baby, I know. I would never do anything behind your back. We agreed, no cheating ever. One time and that's it. We both agreed. Judy snuggled up to her husband and kissed his face until he turned to her and kissed her on the lips. Over time, Mark forgot what his wife had said to him. She always tried to tell him everything that happened when she was with Bambi. He trusted her, and as far as he could tell, she had never betrayed his trust. The following summer, 3 weeks before the end of Judy's summer vacation, they threw away the last pack of birth control pills. In a couple of weeks, they would start trying for a baby. Mark was thrilled with the idea, and Judy claimed to share his enthusiasm, but part of her was nervous about starting this new phase in her life. Mark was vaguely aware of his wife's fears, so he planned a short trip to the beach, thinking it would be a nice way to end Judy's summer vacation. Judy liked the idea of a romantic getaway and bought a new revealing bikini and several sexy summer dresses for the occasion. The resort was beautiful, and the happy couple enjoyed the attention of the staff. They spent the first 2 days lying in the sun and walking hand in hand along the beach. They spent their evenings having a light dinner and then watching the sunset from the balcony, followed by hours of lovemaking. It was a happy time for both of them. On the third evening, Judy suggested going dancing at one of the nearby clubs. She put on a tight-fitting emerald-colored dress and high-heeled sandals. "Wow, Judy, you look amazing! How am I going to keep the wolves off tonight?" Judy laughed. "Don't be silly. You're the only animal I'm interested in." The club was packed with people. Loud music was playing and dancers were moving to the beat. Judy was a sexy dancer and attracted a lot of attention. Every time they returned to their table to rest, several young, lustful guys approached them and asked Judy to dance. Mark could see that she was flattered, but Judy rejected all their offers. Towards the end of the evening, a handsome man in casual clothes slowly approached their table. Mark noticed him before Judy did and stopped talking. Judy turned to see what had distracted her husband. "Judy?" the man asked cautiously. "Stephen!" Judy exclaimed. "What are you doing here?" She stood up to hug the uninvited guest, while Mark looked from one to the other. Then Judy turned to Mark, who also stood up. "Mark, this is Stephen. We met at April's birthday party. Stephen, this is my husband, Mark." Mark was a little stunned as his brain slowly processed the information. This was the guy who had seduced her the night she was out with her friends. The guy who had sent Judy home in a state of arousal. This guy was responsible for one of the best sex sessions he had ever had with his wife. The man extended his hand. "Hello, Mark. It's very nice to meet you." Yes, thank you. It's nice to meet you too," Mark stammered, shaking the shorter man's hand. Judy smiled at Stephen. "My goodness, it's a small world. How did you end up here?" "My company was entertaining clients here earlier in the week, and I decided to take a couple of days for myself. It's so beautiful here that I'm not ready to go back to work. How about you? What brought you to this little piece of paradise?" "Our last vacation before the start of the new school year," Judy said, still smiling broadly. The handsome salesman turned to Mark. "I don't want to impose, but would you mind if I asked your lovely wife to dance?" The voice in Mark's head screamed, "No! Damn it!" But before he could answer, Judy blurted out, "Oh, he doesn't mind." Then she turned to her stunned husband, put her hand on his forearm, and asked, "Do you mind, dear?" After a short pause, Mark replied, No, of course not." Then he sat down and Judy walked away, holding the man's hand. Mark sat there for only a few seconds before deciding he needed another drink, so he got up and went to the bar. The bar was crowded, and while he waited, he turned to watch his wife dancing with another man. They were moving well together, and Mark began to feel uncomfortable. Finally, he got his drink and returned to the table just as the third song started. Judy and Stephen had no intention of leaving the dance floor. Mark sipped his drink, his unease growing. The third song ended, and Mark saw Stephen pointing at him. Judy turned around and must have realized she had been gone too long. She said something to her dance partner and then quickly returned to the table. "Oh, he's a great dancer. Thanks for letting us," she said cheerfully, downing her drink in one gulp. Mark didn't answer. He just stared at his wife, who was looking around the room, trying to avoid his gaze. Finally, she looked at him. "Are you okay?" "No, I'm not fine. He asked you to dance, and if he hadn't reminded you that I was sitting here, you'd still be out there ignoring me." "I'm sorry, dear. I saw you go to the bar, so we just kept dancing. I didn't mean to ignore you." Mark was still angry, but he agreed when Judy asked him to dance. They danced to a few slow songs, and Judy snuggled up to him as they swayed to the music. When they returned to the table, Mark went to get drinks. Mark turned away from the bar with a glass in each hand. Dodging a few patrons, he looked up to find his table. He almost dropped his drinks when he saw Stephen standing at Judy's chair. He leaned over and whispered something in her ear. Placing his hand on the table, Mark turned and walked away. "So your boyfriend's back. Did he ask you to dance?" Judy just shook her head and took the glass of wine Mark had placed in front of her. She took a big sip, then another. Mark watched her, waiting for her to speak. She emptied her glass and stood up. Mark knocked back his glass and stood up too. "Are we leaving?" "Yes. I think we should go back to the room." When they entered the room, Judy threw herself into his arms. She kissed him deeply, burying her face in his tousled hair. Mark fell onto the bed, gasping for breath, and Judy climbed on top of him. Judy kissed him on the cheek. "I love you, baby." She got up from the bed and went into the bathroom. Mark followed her a few seconds later. Naked, he stood over the toilet while Judy brushed her teeth and came out of the bathroom. He washed his face and hands, and when he came out, Judy was standing in front of the mirror, applying fresh lipstick. He watched her as she tousled her hair and sprayed more perfume on herself. She was still fully dressed. "Baby, what are you doing?" Judy grabbed her purse and tucked it under her arm. She took a deep breath and said, "Mark, I told Stephen I'd stop by his place for a drink before bed. I'll be back in a minute." "What did you say?" "Honey, I really want to do this. It's just a drink before bed. I won't be long." "Are you out of your mind? You're not going to that bastard's room." "Mark, please. He's leaving in the morning and I'll never see him again. I need to see him and say goodbye. Just give me this last chance before we start a family and I become a mother forever." "Are you out of your mind? I won't let you sleep with another man. You're my wife." She walked up to him and put her hand on his bare chest. "Yes, baby, I'm your wife and I always will be. That's why I have to do this now, before I become the mother of your children." Mark pushed her away. "No way! Get out of here! It's over between us!" Judy struggled to hold back her tears. "I thought you would understand. It's just one night, just a goodbye. You have to let me do this and I'll come back to you forever." "No. You don't have to do this. You want to do this, so don't tell me you need to." Mark grabbed his pants and pulled them on, while Judy backed away toward the door. She almost expected him to lunge at her, but he turned, grabbed his suitcase, and threw it hard onto the bed. Judy froze. She had never seen her husband so angry. Mark grabbed his things and stuffed them into his bag. He went into the bathroom and quickly returned with his toiletries. Judy held onto the door handle with one hand. What are you doing? Why are you packing your things?" "I'm getting as far away from you as I can. You don't think I'm going to wait here for you to come back from your little party, do you? I'll find a room and leave tomorrow. I don't care what you do." "Mark, please, you're overreacting. Everything will be fine tomorrow. Please, baby, don't do anything stupid." He turned toward the door. "Get out of my way, you idiot!" Judy stepped back. Mark rushed past her and ran out of the room. She called after him, but he kept running down the hallway and turned the corner. He went to the front desk and asked for another room. "I'm sorry, sir, but we're fully booked," said the clerk, looking at his disheveled appearance. Let me make a call." It was almost midnight, and there was hardly anyone in the lobby. Mark paced from corner to corner, and the clerk looked at him with concern. Finally, she hung up the phone and handed him a piece of paper. "The Nova Hotel is about a block away. They have one room available, but it's only for tonight. Tomorrow it's already booked." "I'll take it." Mark snatched the paper from her hands, startling the young clerk. He paused, took a few deep breaths, then smiled at her. "I'm sorry. You've been very helpful. I'm sorry for being so rude." She smiled as he turned calmly and walked away. Judy wiped the tears from her eyes as she walked down the hallway. She checked the room number on the napkin Stephen had left on her desk. She found the door and knocked. Stephen opened the door in his bathrobe and let her in. Judy walked up to him and burst into tears when he hugged her. Hey, what happened? Did he hurt you?" "No, he got very angry when I told him I was going to see you before bed. He said some terrible things, then grabbed his things and ran away." "Oh dear, I'm so sorry he reacted that way," Stephen cooed, patting her on the back. "Let me pour you a glass of champagne and we'll talk about it," he said, helping her onto the bed. Mark dragged his suitcase to the front desk of the Nova Hotel and gave his name. Apparently, another employee had given him all of Mark's information because he simply asked for his credit card and handed him the room key 20 seconds later. Mark found his room and collapsed onto the bed. His head was spinning. Just 24 hours ago, his life had been perfect. Now everything had gone wrong. Suddenly, he felt extremely tired, and his eyes began to close with sleep. The sound of slamming doors and sunlight streaming through the open blinds woke him up around 8 a.m. For a few seconds, he was confused because he didn't recognize his surroundings. Gradually, memories of the previous night's terrifying events came flooding back. At about the same time, Judy sleepily reached across the bed to stroke her husband. The bed was cold and empty on that side. She opened her eyes and looked around, hoping that Mark had returned to their room, but she was alone. She turned her face to the pillow and cried. Gathering her strength, she found the phone. She called, but Mark didn't answer. When the answering machine kicked in, she said, "Mark, honey, I fell asleep waiting for you to come back. I'm alone in our room and I'm scared. Please, sweetie, forgive me for everything. Please come back. I need you." Mark felt a little better after his shower. He got dressed and picked up his phone. He listened to Judy's voicemail message. Her message confused him, but he didn't panic. He called the airline and rebooked his flight for the same day. He ignored several calls from his soon-to-be ex-wife. He called his brother and asked him to pick him up from the airport. Judy spent most of the day calling home and Mark's cell phone, but no one answered. She called her parents and told them that she and Mark had had a fight and he had left in a rage. They tried to call their son-in-law, but to no avail. In desperation, Judy called Mark's parents. His mother, Martha, answered. "Marty, we had a big fight. It's all a big misunderstanding. We both said stupid things and he left in a rage. I thought he would come back at night, but I woke up alone. I have no idea where he is." "He's here at John's. You'd better go home and sort things out. He's talking about divorce." "Oh my God, I don't want a divorce. Please, Marty, knock some sense into him." "He's my son, I love him, but he makes his own decisions. If you love him, you'd better go home and convince him of that." While Judy was driving home, Mark was meeting with his lawyer. "I just want out. She left to sleep with another man. I can't forgive her." "Well, there's no fault in this state, so you can file for divorce right away if you want. You'll split everything 50-50. She makes a little less than you, but she probably won't have to pay alimony. She'll probably be allowed to stay in the house until it's sold, and then you'll get half of the proceeds." "How long will that take?" "If she signs right away, 4 to 5 months. If she fights it and asks for counseling, probably 8 to 9 months. Okay? File as soon as possible. Judy tried to see Mark, but he avoided her. She called, texted, emailed, and even sent him a note, but he didn't respond. Finally, she asked her lawyer to request counseling, and the judge approved it. She really wanted to talk to him at the first session. Mark was furious that he had to meet with this selfish bitch for 8 damn mandatory counseling sessions. When he showed up for the first session, he was ready to explode. Mr. and Mrs. Collins, the judge has ordered these counseling sessions, and you must both attend and cooperate, or you will be charged with contempt of court. Do you understand? Dr. Ruby Scott looked at them both, and they nodded. Okay, Mr. Collins, you filed for divorce. So why do you want a divorce? She had a sexual relationship with another man. She broke her vows. I can't live with that. No, I didn't. I've never slept with anyone but you since we started dating. Nonsense! You slept with Stephen at the hotel. You told me you were going to sleep with him and expected me not to mind. No, I said I wanted to have a drink with him before bed. Just a drink to say goodbye. I never said I wanted to sleep with him. Mark stared at Judy. You're lying. You spent the whole night with him. No, I didn't sleep with him. I fell asleep in our bed, waiting for you to come back after you left in a rage. Nonsense. You put on makeup and said you were going to his room. Yes, but I just wanted to say goodbye. I went, had a drink, said goodbye, and came back to our room. I tried to call you and even sent you a text message, but you didn't answer. I slept in our bed alone, waiting for you to come back. Well, Mr. Collins, it seems you had some misconceptions when you filed for divorce. Now that you know the truth, how do you want to proceed? I don't believe her. She's lying. She told me she wanted to go to this guy's room and made it clear she wanted to sleep with him. To whom did she imply this, Mr. Collins? I'm not clear. Perhaps you misunderstood her words? Perhaps you jumped to conclusions? Mark clutched his head, his thoughts racing. My God, did I misunderstand? No, this is just a ploy. She slept with that guy, I know it. He shook his head. He looked at Judy, then at Dr. Scott. I'm sorry, Doctor, I just don't believe her. Well, we still have 7 sessions to figure this out, but I think that without proof to the contrary, we have to take Mrs. Collins at her word that she didn't sleep with another man. During the 3rd session, Judy said she had news for Mark. Dr. Scott smiled at her and asked her to share the information with Mark. Mark, honey, you're going to be a father. What? Yes, dear, isn't it wonderful? We conceived a child just like you wanted, just like we planned. But how? We haven't had sex in almost 2 months. Yes, I'm 8 months pregnant. Remember, I stopped taking the pill? It usually takes some time, but your swimmers must have been very determined. I think it happened at the hotel. If you remember, we did it quite a lot there, she said and blushed. Mark was stunned. Are you sure? I mean, absolutely sure you're pregnant? Yes, of course, I went to the doctor and took a test. She said I'm 8 weeks along. Honey, we're going to have a baby. I can't believe it. A baby? We're going to have a baby. Yes, it's exactly what we wanted. Please, Mark, I want us to be a family. Will you at least think about coming home? I'm managing, but I would really like my husband to be home to help me. Mark was still in shock, his thoughts racing. Is this possible? Jude is really pregnant. I'm going to be a father. My God. Finally, he looked at Dr. Scott. Is this true? She laughed. Yes, I saw the medical report, and yes, she is pregnant. This is not a joke. Mark, since you're going to be a father soon, don't you think it would be better to go home? Still stunned, Mark simply nodded his head. Judy jumped up and hugged him. Oh, Mark, we're going to have a baby. I just know you're going to be the best father in the world. Mark returned home. He was overwhelmed by the outpouring of love from all the future grandparents. The grandfathers quickly cleaned, washed, painted, and completely furnished the nursery, which had previously been a spare bedroom. The grandmothers decorated the new nursery with neutral, soft colors and promised to bring more as soon as they found out the gender of their long-awaited grandson. Judy was so happy that Mark had returned home. She knew that he was still unsure because of her foolish behavior at the hotel. Dr. Scott had warned her not to rush things and under no circumstances to pressure Mark. When her morning sickness subsided, she began to feel a constant sexual attraction to him. Mark slept in their bed, but they hadn't had sex since he returned. He was kind and attentive, but now her needs were growing stronger. She followed Dr. Scott's advice, but she was beginning to feel disappointed. She decided she had waited long enough. Mark smelled Judy's lasagna when he entered the house. He heard her banging pots and pans in the kitchen. He glanced into the dining room and saw that the table was beautifully set. He froze when he entered the kitchen. Judy had her back to him and was tossing a salad. She was wearing an apron over a short silk kimono-style robe. "What's that?" Judy jumped and turned sharply toward him. "Mark, I didn't hear you come in. You scared me." "I'm sorry, is that lasagna I smell? And garlic bread?" "Yes, dear. I wanted to make something special for you tonight. Pour yourself a glass of wine and help me set the table." Mark brought the pasta and bread and then sat down at the table. In the kitchen, Judy took off her apron and carried the salad into the dining room. "How was your day at work?" she asked, sitting down in a chair. "Oh, fine. Not too busy. How about you?" They chatted about trivial matters while they ate, and Judy refilled Mark's glass several times, sipping water from her own glass. "I hope you like the wine. I tried it when I opened the bottle, and I really liked it." "It's excellent. Too bad you can't enjoy more of it. Your lasagna is delicious, as always. Did you make dessert?" Judy stood up and carried the leftovers to the kitchen. Returning to the table, she stopped next to Mark's chair. "To answer your question," she untied the belt of her robe. "Yes, I made something special for you for dessert." Over the next few months, Judy and Mark had sex almost every day. As the due date approached, they became more cautious, but still enjoyed sex whenever they could. Judy was happier than she had ever been. They had decided not to find out the sex of the baby, so Judy and Mark chose names for both a boy and a girl. She was almost certain she was having a boy, and she was just as certain that Mark was hoping for a son. When Judy went into labor, the whole family gathered at the hospital. The delivery went fairly smoothly, and Mark was by her side when she gave birth to her first child. "It's a boy," the doctor announced as he handed the baby to the nurses. The nurses quickly took the boy and began to wash him, and he cried loudly. Mark leaned down and kissed his wife's sweat-covered face. "You did it, Jude. We have a son," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. The nurse brought the crying baby to the bed and placed him in Judy's outstretched arms. Judy hummed softly, and Mark leaned down to look at his newborn son. "What the hell?" Mark jumped back, as if he had been electrocuted. He turned pale, stumbled over the bed, and bumped into 4 grandparents who had just rushed into the room. "Mark, what is it? What happened? Is the baby okay?" The grandparents bombarded him with questions, but he pushed them away and ran out of the room. Martha was the first to reach Judy and the baby. "My God!" she exclaimed and turned away. The other grandparents quickly gathered around the bed. The baby had stopped crying and was babbling, looking at his mother. His dark, thin hair clung to his small head, and his slanted brown eyes sparkled. He was the spitting image of his handsome father, Stephen Choi. When the commotion subsided, Mark returned to the maternity ward and insisted that his name not be included on the birth certificate, and the hospital staff agreed. His father convinced him to talk to Judy and hear her side of the story. He reluctantly entered her room. Mark looked around the room, but the baby was not there. He looked questioningly at Judy. "Where's the baby?" "They took him to the nursery so I could rest. My parents are there too." Mark, I'm sorry. I didn't know the baby could be Steven's. Really? So he conceived you just by talking to you? Judy lowered her head. No, of course I lied about that night. I was with him, but only once. I was upset, and he was comforting me. We were drinking champagne, and then he started stroking my back, and, well, it just happened. Of course it happened. You knew perfectly well it would if you went there. You wanted to sleep with him, and you did. Judy shook her head. No, no, no. After you left, I decided to just go and say goodbye to him, but I was so upset. He realized how upset I was and took advantage of me. As soon as it was over, I ran back to our room and cried all night. So when you said you just talked to him and then waited all night for me to come back to our room, you left out one little detail, the part where you slept with him and then came back to our room. Tears streamed down Judy's face as she sobbed uncontrollably. She nodded her head. I hurt you enough, so I lied. I didn't even think the baby could be his. We only did it once, and you and I did it dozens of times that week. Please, Mark, I love you. The last few months have been so wonderful. Let's just forget about this, okay? No, Jude, we can't. I loved you with all my heart, and you destroyed that love when you said you had to spend one last night with him. Like a fool, I let you convince me that you had seen the light and left him, but it was a lie. I'm tired of the lies and of being manipulated like a fool. Judy burst into tears. No, please, Mark, please. I'm taking all my things out of the house. You can stay there until the divorce is finalized, and then we'll sell the house and split the proceeds unless you and Stephen want to buy out my share. As he left, Judy's crying filled the room. His mother-in-law was just coming back from the nursery and grabbed him in the hallway. Mark, I know this is a shock. She made a huge mistake, but she loves you, and I think you still love her. Can't you forgive her? I'm sorry, but there were too many lies and now a child. It's too much, he said, gently pulling away from her embrace and walking away. Mark quickly walked down the hallway to the elevators, hoping to leave before he ran into other relatives. Wait for the elevator, he shouted, and saw a hand stop the closing doors. Thanks, he muttered to the nurse who held the door open for him. They rode down in silence and walked to the parking lot. Mark hung his head and walked as if the weight of the world was on his shoulders. Are you okay? The nurse asked. Mark nodded and tried to hide the tears on his face. Hey, wait, the nurse said, grabbing his arm. Mark looked up at her concerned face. Her pale blue eyes scanned his face, and she directed him to the nearest bench in the park. When she grabbed his arms, she saw his wedding ring. Is that your wife? Is she sick? Mark took a few deep breaths to find the strength to speak. She just had a baby. It's not mine, Mark said, suddenly feeling a deep sense of shame. He's Asian, like her boyfriend. The beautiful blonde's face changed from concern to sympathetic. Oh, I see. I'm so sorry. They sat down. She took his hands, and they were silent for a few minutes. What are you going to do? Get a divorce. She lied to me about everything. I'm such a fool. They talked a little more as Mark gradually calmed down, and then she stood up. Listen, I have to go, but here, take my card. My cell phone number is on the back. Call me if you want to talk. And Mark, everything will be okay. You just need time to get through this. It took him almost 3 months, but he called the nurse on her cell phone. When April answered, she sounded a little out of breath, and he was afraid he had interrupted her. No, you're just in time. I was just taking the last box of stuff to my new apartment. How are you? I'm fine. The divorce is finalized and signed, and in 60 days I'll be free. It took me a while to get over it, but I wanted to call and thank you for your help that day. Oh, I'm just glad I could help. I'm glad you called before the elevator doors closed. Otherwise, we might never have talked. Yeah, speaking of time, I wanted to invite you to dinner to thank you, if you have time. She laughed. I don't usually have time for a social life, but I'm on vacation this week. How about tomorrow? Hey, my sense of timing is really improving. Just give me your address and I'll stop by tomorrow evening. Mark had picked the perfect moment. April had broken up with her boyfriend, but they had remained friends and continued to live together for another 2 months to see out the end of their lease. Mark's call was exactly the change April had been waiting for, and they had a wonderful evening. That dinner led to many more, and 18 months later, they moved in together. Mark bought a ring and planned to propose as soon as the right moment came. 9 months ago. Judy wasn't so lucky with her timing. Her parents had hired someone to help her find Stephen. Now, knowing his address, she was pushing her stroller down the driveway toward his house when the door opened and Stephen appeared on the porch. Stephen, honey, I've been looking for you. Look, you have a son. Stephen froze, and a small Asian woman came out onto the porch behind him. Stephen, who is this woman and what is she doing here? She asked. Stephen opened his mouth but couldn't say a word. Judy turned to the woman. Who are you? I'm his wife. We've been married for 12 years. Well, wait. What did you say about a son? Stephen staggered, leaned back against the porch railing, flew over it, and landed in the rose bushes just as the automatic timer turned on the sprinklers.